Hey everybody, Sal Capaccio here, WGR Sports Radio 550, Bill's sideline reporter, inviting you to do what I do every Wednesday and Friday night. That's check out 30 Minutes Live with CDP, coming at you from Ontario, right on your Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channels. You can check it out every Wednesday and Friday night, just like I do. 30 Minutes Live with CDP.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Monday, August 23rd. I'm got a podcast this morning. My guest is going to be Brian in Buffalo, New York. He's so that happens anyways. We'll cross your fingers. I will bring on Brian in just a second. I know they're doing some construction around my complex today with a hydro, so we'll cross your fingers. I don't lose power on here. So just 1 second. And Brian's also the host of the Tee to Green golf show as well in Western New York. So if anybody here is watching and is a golfer, feel free to ask a question in that, and Brian can answer it. I still don't know a lot about golf, so anyways, 1 second. I'm going to bring Brian on. 1 minute. Hi, good morning, Brian. How you doing?
Chris, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Sure. It was fun the first time. I'm glad to be back, ready to go. I know the last time we spoke a few months ago, we were talking about the end of the Sabres season, and unfortunately, there's not much better news to report since our last conversation.
I was going to say they have made some. Well, they did draft Owen Power out of Michigan, and I guess he's going to stay another year at the University of Michigan, which I think, to me, is a wise decision. And the Sabres have made some free agents. What?
Oh, okay. Chris, could you ask that? You froze right at the end there. If you could
Yes,
just
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm going to turn the Wi-Fi off my phone because I think maybe that had something to do with it. I was just going to ask you, I know we're almost going into September and training camp will be starting up soon for the Sabres in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe. Do you think the Jack Eichel situation will be resolved one way or the other?
It's trending towards not, which I think is unfortunate for both sides. Obviously, at this point, Jack Eichel and his side has made it clear that he would like to move on. The Sabres haven't had much positive to say about him either, in the sense that you think, are they trying to mend the relationship to bring him back? So I think, unfortunately, for a player of his caliber, of his quality, that you would, of course, love to have on any team, I think the relationship is beyond repair at this point. Jack Eichel still wants to have surgery. He says, as far as I'm hearing, that is still bothering him, his neck injury, that he wants to get that done, and he wants to have it done in a timely manner so that he can be available for this upcoming fall and this upcoming regular season. So I can't see a scenario where it's good that the Sabres still have him on the team come late September when they get into training camp and preseason games, especially with him being the captain. I mean, I don't see how you can make him the captain if you have to take that off. I think that only makes this worse if he's still on the roster. I understand Kevin Adams' idea of holding out as long as possible in order to try to get the best deal. But at some point, I feel like you just have to take the best you can, cut bait, understand that, look, this scenario obviously was not – the Sabres are going to lose regardless. They're trading away a top 10 talent in the league for picks and prospects and a quantity of players that you just hope somewhat can help you in the future. They're not going to get a top 10 player back. I mean, that's a fact. I don't think any team is going to give up their best player to get Jack Eichel in a trade. They're going to give up prospects and picks or a quantity of players. And, I just think that they have to get it done before training camp, I think. I just think it will be a story every day for the Sabres, for a very, 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 very young locker room and a now official first-time head coach in Don Granato. I don't think they want to be talking about this every day. So I think if I'm Kevin Adams, or if I'm advising Kevin Adams, I'm telling him, yes, hold out for the best deal, but essentially you've got a month and you've got to pull the trigger on something.
I was gonna say, at least they've resolved their coaching situation, and I think they did the right decision, giving Don Granado a chance as a full-time head coach. But I agree with you on that, Brian. The Jack Eichel situation needs to get resolved, and their goaltending situation too. I know they brought in former Storm goalie from years ago, Craig Anderson, who's I think 40 or 41 right now, which is still younger than me. They brought him in. Who's the backup and who's the third string goalie? And is Michael Hauser still going to get an invite to training camp with the Sabres?
We don't have the official invite list yet for training camp, so Michael Hauser could, I guess, at some point. I haven't heard about him signing with any other organization, so he could be a possibility. Aaron Dell was also brought in a trade. You've got him, you've got Craig Anderson, and of course, Linus Ullmark is now off to Boston with that contract. The Sabres did make an offer to Ullmark. They said that it was just the offer that Boston was offering him was just something that they didn't want to spend. I don't even know if it was the $5 million. I mean, that's a high number, but I think it was the length of the deal. They didn't want to. I think they were looking more like a 2-year deal. Ullmark got a 5-year deal. I just think with the uncertainty on Ullmark's consistency to be healthy, that was an issue. And also, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen played a handful of games last year at the end of the season before he got hurt, and he has been supposedly on the radar to be their guy here for the years to come. So I think they're going to give him every chance that they have to possibly be the guy. It may not work out. They may have to send him to Rochester, but if somehow UPL looks good enough to be the guy, I think they have the perfect setup with Craig Anderson being what would be kind of, I guess you'd say, the backup, because you mentioned his experience, you mentioned his age, but he is a high character guy, everything that we're hearing from him. And he also is a guy that I think would be a great mentor for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. So to me, if he can come in, Luukkonen that is, and look like he can be ready to play in the National Hockey League, he did in the handful of games last year in front of a very bad team. I think maybe that's a scenario that you could see play out. Dell has the flexibility of a 2-way contract. So for some reason, if UPL needs to have a few weeks in Rochester, then you've got an extra goalie that can go back up and down too.
Okay, I was going to say, and then you traded one of your top defensemen to the Flyers too, in Ristolainen. What's your thoughts on trading him to a team in your conference as well? Because I think he's a good big physical defenseman, and I think he'll do well with Philadelphia. But I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, Ristolainen was a guy that analytics player people didn't like. The old school hockey tough guy liked because he was kind of, he was willing to throw his weight around and was rough in the corners and was very strong. Let's face it, he was very strong. Decision making at times questionable. He just an up and down roller coaster kind of career, I think, with the Sabres. He and Sam Reinhart are two players that I would put in the same category. They were both guys that I think are good enough that you'd want to keep, but they both have been pretty vocal about saying that they wouldn't sign here long term. So Ristolainen and Reinhart had 1 year left.
Okay.
The thought would be, listen, let's get something now for him versus losing him, either getting getting less at next year's trading deadline or outright possibly losing them next year. So I was actually, I think, pretty pleasantly pleased with what Kevin Adams got in return for Ristolainen. Not only a couple of players, but the fact that he got a first-round draft pick, the 14th overall pick in this year's draft. So I thought that was a very, very good return for Ristolainen, who we weren't quite sure maybe what he was going to get in return for him.
I was going to say, and then I guess Jeff Skinner will be back. I still think, I know the Sabres are probably still going to struggle this season, but I do think they have a coaching staff in place now, and I think the team did respond, in my opinion, to when Don Granado took over last year from Ralph, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it was the right move to bring Don Granado back. I mean, there obviously were some other more marquee names available, and let's face it, that would have also been pricier. And the Pagulas right now, everything we're hearing is that they're not wanting to throw around money. So I think it worked out in both facets. Don Granado was not going to be the most expensive option. The young players that last year finished the second half of this season, I think, fairly strong, responded very well to Don Granato. And also, yes, maybe to sports talk phone call guy that calls in and says, oh, we should have hired Bruce Boudreau or this guy. They think because he's got a bigger name because he coached maybe somewhere else. Don Granato, yes, he hadn't been an NHL coach, but you cannot argue the pedigree and the hockey family that that Don Granato would come from. It's not like he's new to the hockey business or the hockey world. Like, him and his family have had success at every level. I think to have what I think is maybe kind of like a quiet, stern motivator in Don Granato. He's not going to flip out on the bench. Like, I know some fans want to see that coach that, John Tortorella that's throwing water bottle. Like, he's not going to do that, but that's okay. I think the Sabres are so young now, especially if you take Eichel off this team. Who knows who the captain might be? I mean, I've got some ideas on that, but I think you need a nurturing coach who also can be motivating, who also has a resume enough that players are going to respect him. And I think he checks all those boxes. So I think ultimately it was the right move. I think he did enough to at least deserve a chance. And it's not something that cost the Sabres an arm and a leg that if a year and a half from now you're like, uh-oh, this didn't work out, that it's going to cost you long term either. So I think it was the right move overall to bring him back. They did bring back some of the staff. I know Dan Girardi moved from the assistant bench role to kind of an upstairs advisory role. I know that some of the other assistants did stay on. So I think it'll be a good mix. And Granato himself did something that I think is also important. Remember, when you're the head coach, you're the face of this franchise in terms of how you represent yourself with the media and with fans and in the community. And I think some of the previous head coaches didn't get that quite often. They always thought like that, when they were doing interviews, that it was a battle or that this was something that they felt like that they had to fight. I think, and I guess I'm biased saying this as a person that's a media member that loves to hearing, a good interview, but this is you're representing the team every day after practice and after every game. And I think Granato handles that quite well. So that's something I think that you see so well with the Bills organization, also a Pegula-owned team, that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, when they speak publicly or they're out in public, they represent everything that you would want in a franchise. And the Sabres, I don't think, had that for quite a while. Jason Botterill, the GM, didn't handle himself that well. I think Kevin Adams is doing a decent job so far. Before that, Tim Murray rubbed people the wrong way. Now, fans loved him because he did whatever he wanted to, but sometimes it came off a little aggressive and maybe rubbed some other NHL teams and executives the wrong way. So I think you've got to have that proper balance. And I think right now, Granato and Adams are, at least on the public side of things, guys that if they are successful and can stay here long term, I think that the Pegulas can be proud that they're representing their organization.
And what I was going to say, stability. The franchise, to me, needs stability because they've had so many GMs and coaches in the last few years. And I think if they get somebody in there that'll be around for a couple years, at least 3 years or longer, that will help too. The stability, well, winning obviously helps, but I find stability because there's been such turnover with the Sabres the last.
Yeah, you just.
I don't know if you. Oh, sorry.
No. You can't keep changing coaches. I agree. It just over and over and over. Now, you have the wrong one. You got to do it. You got to make the change. Yeah. I mean, I was sitting here saying the same thing about with the Bills. They just kept changing coaches over and over and over. And even though Rex Ryan was the flashiest, most expensive one of the group, you didn't have the right guy. So you had to make a change. Sean McDermott did not, he wasn't as flashy, but there's a lot of characteristics of what Sean McDermott, how he carries himself, is how Don Granato carries himself. I think it's this quiet confidence and everybody being on the same page and understanding that the buy-in to hard work and teamwork is what's going to get it done. And I think there's a lot of similarities between the two of them. They're both, at the time, getting their first chance to be a head coach in their respective leagues. So I like what Granato brings. I think the young players responded to him well. And let's face it, this team is going to be relying on young players this year with Casey Middlestat and Dylan Cousins. and a whole bunch of guys that don't have a ton of NHL experience and success. So I think if Don Granato can not only be a coach, but a teacher, a father figure all at the same time, if they can check a lot of those boxes, then, maybe however we view success this year, it's going to be tough. I don't think it's going to be all viewed on wins and losses, because I think there's going to be more losses than there are wins. I don't think that I'm stating anything crazy here by saying that. How do you see these growth in these players? And I think you could see that over the month and a half that Granato took over as the interim coach last year. Yes, the Sabres didn't win a ton, but there were very, very few games that I feel like I remember talking on postgame afterwards about questioning effort or questioning decision-making. Yes, at some point they lost because it's tough to defend Brad Marchand and Bergeron and Pasternak because the Sabres just don't have the talent to match with them. But it was very often that you said they lost because they were making poor choices or because they lacked effort. And that was definitely something that you could question about the team over the last 5-6 years. And at least, again, through a half of a shortened season, I thought that was a good sign that we didn't see any of that.
I was going to say, and I some other people have told me this too. They can see Dylan Cousins as a future captain of the team, but I just don't know if I would make him a captain right now, because that might put a little too much more pressure on him to try to turn the franchise around right now. You want to see a young player like him continue to develop and build his confidence up. I don't know if you agree with what I just said there or not.
I agree with both. I think he will. I think he should and will be the future captain. I don't think that maybe it's the right move to slap it on him this summer. I think that from what we've seen from him on and off the ice, his attitude, his effort, his willingness to stick up for his teammates, his willingness to hold himself accountable. That's something that sometimes we didn't always get with Jack Eichel, is that Eichel wanted to – I think he wanted to give the impression that he was holding himself accountable, but I feel like it wasn't never necessarily genuine. I think Cousins, you get that. And I think that he's probably the best candidate out of the young core players. I think he's the best candidate to be the future long-term captain. Now, could the Sabres sign a veteran to be a captain for the next year or two? I'm thinking of a handful of years ago when they signed Brian Giunta, and he was on the team for a couple of years. Giunta, obviously, we don't have to go through why he makes a great captain. There's so many reasons why. I don't know if that player still could be out there, or maybe a player like that comes back in terms of a Jack Eichel trade. Maybe there is a guy that you'd say, you know what, part of this Jack Eichel trade, we want, whoever's Brian Giunta off of that team that could be maybe a kind of a stopgap captain. And then also, too, that maybe they don't feel that they actually have to name one officially. But I think you're totally right. Cousins is a guy that could be the captain. I don't think it would be terrible if they put it on him already, but I think the best move is to at least see another full season of leadership out of him. And then I think he is the best candidate right now, if I'm looking at the current roster, that would make the best guy to be the leader of this team going forward for years to come.
I know with the Red Wings, when Steve Yzerman took over, after Henrik Zetterberg retired as captain, they waited almost 3 years to name a captain, and they finally named Dylan Larkin this past season as captain, because they didn't want to do it when he was too young and put too much pressure on him. And you know what? It's not the end of the world if the Sabres or another team goes a year or two without a captain. You can always do it by committee as well, have like 2 or 3 guys as assistant captain. So I really think the Sabres could hold off on replacing Eichel as a captain until one of these guys is actually ready.
I agree. And I wonder, hockey is a sport where you're together so much. It's a high effort sport. Some sports you might argue whoever's the captain, it doesn't maybe have as much impact. I guess if you wanted me to argue for a sport where captaincy maybe meant more than others, I guess I'd put hockey in that mix, because it is a high effort sport. You need to try to have a guy that maybe can be a motivator, especially on a team right now that isn't loaded with NHL All-Stars. I mean, if you had a team that was just loaded with talent, nothing might need to be said, for weeks and weeks on good teams. I'm sure that probably is something that maybe does happen, when you've got great teams, like Tampa Bay. Does their captain really need to say a lot, that often? Probably not. But on the Sabres, I think right now there's so much youth. I think they're all still trying to prove themselves. Maybe they can get away with it for another year. Nobody has their spot like locked in that they can take for granted, that you would necessarily have to, have kind of a watchdog. Obviously, ideally, if you could have a captain, you'd want one. But I don't think that it's better to not have one. But to force the hand, like you mentioned with the Red Wings, to maybe wait a year or two and see what you got. And it doesn't always have to be that you start the year naming the captain. If halfway through the season, Don Granato is like, Dylan Cousins is the guy for this. Like, he showed it last year, and he's already showed it now for another 40 games. Like, you could do it then. It doesn't. There's no deadline or calendar that says you have to name a captain on this date. Otherwise, you don't have one. So, I would agree with both of your thoughts. I would wait, but I think Cousins can be the guy here sooner than later.
Okay. Are you still okay for time? I just want to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Okay. This one I had to do this because the announcement was last week, but can I get your thoughts on Rick Jenneret's 51st NHL season, which is incredible, and final season as the Buffalo Sabres TV and radio voice? This is something I had to ask you this morning.
Oh, sure. No problem. Rick, well, let's just say this. Kudos to anyone who can do the same job and do it well for 51 years. That is incredible. And I've been very, very, very fortunate that over the past, now let's see, this will be year 14 of me hosting the network, that I get a chance to sit in the booth right next to Rick, and getting to hear him, obviously, at any point I want to with the headset on up in the press box. It's been a real treat. Obviously, as a child, when the Sabres were better and I was in a non-working mode and a little more of a fan mode, to be able to hear some of his memorable calls was great. Rick's passion for the game is great. As a broadcaster, who's someone that has done hockey play-by-play and realizes how difficult it is, there's a couple things that I really love about Rick. First of all, his ability to go from the normal description conversation voice while he's calling it to an exciting moment, how he's able to raise his voice, let you, especially when you're listening on the radio, let you know something exciting is transpiring on the ice. It doesn't go from a normal voice to an instant scream. He kind of just has that, for the musicians out there, that crescendo. It raises it, and he just does it so well. He's able, obviously, if you know the game well, you're anticipating something exciting might be happening on the ice. I always thought that was something that he did such a good job of. And the other thing, too, let's face it, fans love to hear what you're going to say after a goal, and fans have obviously loved some of his goal calls, forever that he's been doing. So Rick's always been personally kind to me. Anytime that we've had conversations, I've found that they've always been pleasant. Even over the course of some of these times where I haven't gotten to see him because of COVID and we can't interact, we're at least saluting each other from the booth and stuff like that here over the last year. But to hear Rick, to not hear Rick on the call here will be weird after this season, because he's just, ever since I've been born, he has been the guy that has called the Sabres games on the radio. And to be on the other side of it, to be a part of the broadcast, obviously that's something that I'll cherish, knowing that Rick has been a part of something that I've been working on too. I think that's been really special.
I was going to say, I was born in 72, so he was doing the Sabres games on radios a year before I was born. And something else I was reading, the first year of the Sabres, it was Ted Darling and Dave Hodge on the radio. And I was hard to believe that Hockey Night in Canada's Dave Hodge actually was on the Sabres original broadcast team in 70-71.
Yeah, it's amazing how that transpired. And then I guess they had said that, Rick at times was at a practice and that they needed someone to do play-by-play. And obviously Rick would know the story better than me in terms of how he got the job itself, but that they said they needed someone to do it. And then he ended up getting called down to do it. And he's been doing it ever since for 51 years. It's amazing. It really is. We just saw Mike Lang from Pittsburgh just retire.
Yeah.
Obviously Doc Emmerich from the TV side of things, but the longtime Devil's voice just retire. So some legendary hockey announcers here are kind of reaching the end of their career, but all three of those guys will go on forever. I mean, anytime you hear highlights, their voices will be attached to it. So their legacy and their memory will go on for a long time, as long as people are watching hockey highlights.
I was going to say, I believe the Phoenix Suns radio announcer, I believe he's been calling their games since '72, but I believe Rick Jenneret is the longest active broadcaster in all the four major sports right now.
Wow. And obviously Vin Scully had that title
Yes.
for a long, long time with the Dodgers.
Yes.
And, if you ask me favorite play-by-play guy, that could be my answer, at least on the radio. On the radio. I remember as a teenager going to California on a family vacation, and we went to Dodger Stadium. And again, this is pre-cell phone days. This is like mid-90s. Everybody had their Walkman. Remember the Walkmans?
Yes. Yeah.
And like you didn't have to worry about missing anything. When you walked through the seats or through the concourse, Dodger Stadium has an open concourse, you could hear everybody's Walkman radios or their little transistor radios, like listening to Vin Scully. And I just thought for baseball, I mean, because he's such a storyteller, he just did a tremendous job. What a voice to have. But yeah, there's so many legendary announcers. Part of the reason that I'm in the broadcast business is that I loved hearing these guys growing up. I know you also probably have been inspired by some broadcasters as well along the way. But getting to hear Rick as a kid, now work alongside Rick on the radio side on the broadcast, it's been a real treat.
And I know Rick's now on Memo, and I'm thinking about for my podcast, and I'm hoping maybe one day I might even be able to be lucky enough to get him on here, because I'd love to just be able to talk to him even for like 10 minutes and ask him some questions. But yeah, he's one of the, even though I'm a Red Wings fan, Rick is somebody I've been listening to since I was a kid, and he's one of the best in the business.
For sure. And, let's just hope this season the Sabres give him some good games to call. I wonder, no insight at all. This is just me just guessing. I wonder if he didn't want to end on the season of COVID and no fans and just, let's face it, in terms of the Sabres, it's one of the worst seasons in team history. They underperformed. Their captain obviously going through turmoil. There was no fans in the building. I mean, even our interaction amongst media and team members up in the press box was limited. Like, that's not a fun way to leave. So I have no insight of whether or not he wanted to make last year it because it was 50 or he wanted to do another year. But I'm glad that he's going to get to go out with the fact that there'll be fans in the building.
Yes.
We hope it'll be back to normal, at least semi-normal up in the press box. And then this way there can be a really good, tribute and kind of party to thank Rick for all of his years of work.
Well, I'm just hoping I can cross the border, because I'd like to go to a Sabres game this year. But I know you guys can come over to Canada now, but your side is still closed to us. So I'm just going to cross your fingers, and hopefully I'll be able to come to a Sabres game either this fall or in the new year, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I wish that too. I mean, I as someone that likes to visit the Canadian side of the border, I've got cousins that live in Ontario. I don't understand why it is what it is. I know you're not here to talk politics
no.
down that road.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't understand why the same rules of my entry into Canada, if me being vaccinated and then showing proof of a negative test, like if that's good enough for me to go there and then return, what's the difference if you can show the same proof? And it, let's face it, each other's economies on the other side of the bridge. It's not only our own personal entertainment. My wife loves going to Niagara on the Lake. I love taking her up there. I love walking around in the summer. It's one of our favorite spots to go. Let's face it, the Western New York economy also thrives when there's Canadian visitors here too. So, sorry, I didn't mean to go down a political speech.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I wish the rules were the same entry for us into Canada. It should be the same for the Canadians into the United States.
And then one of my guests last week, he's from the National Lacrosse League. They're going to have their draft in Buffalo this year, but because 80% of the players in the lacrosse league are from Canada. They decided to pull it out of Buffalo, which is too bad. But that's another league I like too. And I got to try to go to a Bandits game or a Rock game now in Hamilton. But like I said, one loophole is Canadians can fly across the border. So, but like I said, I'm hoping by the fall or the winter time, things will be a lot better. And yeah, because like I said, it does affect both of our economies, especially in the
yeah. And if you want to directly relate this to our discussion of the Sabres that we're talking about, there are quite a bit of Sabres season ticket holders that live in Southern Ontario. So they've pushed. What have they pushed it now to September 21st?
Yeah, at least September 21st.
So they've been doing it in month increments.
Yep.
You go to October 21st now, that gets into some home games for season ticket holders. I cannot imagine that the Sabres organization, especially those that are in charge of having to deal with ticket sales, cannot be happy at all that this is trending that way. I've got to think that whatever conversations that the Sabres have to have as an organization, whatever pull they can have, they've got to be like, look, enough is enough here. Like we have business that's really being effective. And, there's definitely season ticket holders in Southern Ontario that attend Sabres games on a regular basis. And that would come into jeopardy if it got extended another month beyond this deadline now that's going to September 21st. So let's hope that this is the last one and they can come up with some sort of a plan to make it work.
Yes, and same with the Bills too, with their season ticket holders, and even the Buffalo Bisons. And
that's right, the Bills. I'm forgetting about that. And the Bisons Blue Jays relationship this year has been, obviously strengthened again with the Blue Jays playing in Buffalo, which was a great experience.
Yeah.
People that want to come down not only see the prospects, but let's face it. I mean, a lot of people in Southern Ontario, it might be easier to get to a Bisons game than it is to get to a Blue Jays game. Affordability wise, it of course is much more better. And sometimes if you got a family with a couple of kids, you don't have to drop hundreds and hundreds of dollars to take your kids to a baseball game. So that part too, the Bisons surely are losing out on business right now. Definitely. With how strong the Blue Jays Bisons relationship has kind of, I think, now strengthened here with what has happened over the last couple of years. That's something that's got to be fixed. You're right. I didn't even think about it. The home opener for the Bills game, Canadians now, if you have season tickets or you would plan on going to the opener now, I mean, you've got to make alternative plans. It's not right. If you have followed the rules in terms of getting vaccinated and showing proof.
A lot of us have here. Yes. A lot of us here.
And showing that you have done what it takes to make sure that you're keeping yourself and others safe, then I feel like you should be allowed over.
Definitely. And like I said, I myself and a whole lot of Canadians a couple weeks ago had to fight with Ticketmaster and the promoters of the Billy Joel concert. They weren't going to refund us the money, and we had to tell them, look, we can't cross the border to go to the Billy Joel concert. I said to Ticketmaster, I'd rather have gone to the concert because it was supposed to be a gift for a family member. And I said, when the border is closed for non-essential travel, so they did the right thing, and I would have would have second. Sorry about that.
Nope. I got you back. Yeah, I'm glad Ticketmaster did the right thing. I know sometimes, you've got a big company like that, they've got certain policy and they don't bend. But I mean, obviously, this is something that was out of control of you and fellow Canadians that may have wanted to go see Billy Joel, and that concert turned out to be phenomenal. Unfortunately, for you, but it was a great time from what everybody here I had heard, the friends that went.
Yeah,
but I'm glad they did the right thing. I mean, you can't go. It's the customs border is telling you can't. Like, it's not. So I'm glad they did the right thing, and for you personally too, I'm glad they refunded your tickets.
Yeah. So we'll just cross their fingers, and hopefully, I'm predicting hopefully by October, November, because I know the OHL starting up, and there's 3 U.S. teams in the OHL right now, and they can cross the border no problem. But the OHL apparently hasn't scheduled any Ontario teams to come to the States until November 3rd. So I'm just wondering if the OHL has an inkling seeing when the border restrictions to the U.S. might be relaxed a little bit, because they had it as November 3rd, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, and the American Hockey League that I know Sabre fans are familiar with the Rochester Americans. Hamilton is obviously in the AHL, and there's some Toronto, the Marlies, and some of the other teams that are up in some of the other provinces like that. I'm logistically wondering if they have a plan for that. I haven't looked at their schedule per se to see if they have backloaded it with Canadian versus Canadian and American versus American, at least to start. I don't know what their schedule looks like, but that's another league that's affected that obviously is one step away, from the National Hockey League that I know fans here at Buffalo are very familiar with obviously their following of Rochester and the Americans.
Okay. Are you okay for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Okay, no problem. This one I had to ask you too. What were your thoughts on the Sabres 2021 draft pick selections, including the University of Michigan defenseman Owen Powell, who is, I believe, from Mississauga, Ontario?
I thought it was the right pick. I thought it was the no-brainer. I thought he was definitely the best player on the board. With the Sabres trading away Rasmus Ristolainen, being able to possibly fill a hole quickly is a good idea. I have zero issue about him going back to college. I know that fans immediately think, he's going to stay in college now the whole time, and then he's going to try and become an unrestricted free agent. Look at when you're picked first, you're going to get selected by a team that's not favored to win the Stanley Cup. You're being picked by a bad team. That's why they're picking first. So, I think that when you're a young player, if you have dreams of playing professionally and you get a chance to be the first overall selection in a draft in any sport, I got to think that the excitement is so high that the thought of, their team's not that good, or, they're years away, that's just a small afterthought. I think it's good for both. The Sabres are not going to do a ton of winning next year. Let Owen Power go try and win a national championship. Michigan is bringing back a whole bunch of great players on their team. They've got an opportunity to maybe do something good. So Power can go and try and win a national championship, and then can join the Sabres after the Michigan season is over, even if he wants to do so. So I think it's fine. It doesn't set back the Sabres in any way. They're not winning the Stanley Cup next year to the point where they need Owen Power to get them over the hump. So I think this is fine. Now, if this carries on 2 or 3 years, then I could understand why fans maybe want to jump to that thought. But him going back for one more year, no big deal to me at all. But I think it was the right pick. The rest of the draft is very tough to know. As you know, NHLers, even once you get past the top 10 of the first round, nothing is guaranteed. And with the Sabres in no pressing need to, as we said, to win this year, my guess is they'll be patient with all their draft picks, including Power.
Okay. Just definitely wanted to ask you on that. The next question I wanted to ask you, I'm just going to try to speed up the questions here. What's the latest on the renovations for the KeyBank Center, or the new arena for the Sabres possible in downtown Buffalo as well?
Well, the latest on the renovations is that the Pagula supposedly, in terms of their requests for public money for a new Bill Stadium, part of the check, part of the bankroll is going to include renovations at KeyBank Center. So I haven't heard anything about a new arena possible. I think that they'll upgrade KeyBank Center. As far as I know, unlike the Highmark Stadium, where they're saying structurally there are issues that at some point would have to pull the trigger on a new facility. I think that's why Bills are going in that direction. Structurally, we haven't heard anything, luckily, knock on wood, about KeyBank Center being in that fashion. Inside the arena, there's definitely some needed upgrades. The seats themselves are original to the building from the mid-90s. The scoreboard, I think, is good, but when you look at it compared to what some other NHL cities have done, now all of a sudden you look at it and say, whoa, maybe it is outdated. And there's just some things within the arena that can be done that just make it, I guess you'd say, a little bit more 2021 that fans that in other buildings are used to having. To me, if I had any sort of vote in this, I would try to see if I could do, I know Vegas has some sort of like concourse standing bar areas up on their upper deck. With the fact that the Sabres might not be, at least for the foreseeable future, selling every single seat, I would love for them to take like their upper four corners and maybe take a handful of seats out in each section and create kind of some standing room, patio, bar areas where people can hang out. I think you're seeing that trend so much now in baseball stadiums, kind of like congregation areas where people can hang out. Maybe you have sort of like the high top seating or the bar stool seating. What's really nice about KeyBank Center in the 200 levels that they have table seating where people can kind of congregate around each other. You don't have to have five guys all sitting in a row right across. So I don't know structurally if that's possible, but if I had a vote of something, if you said, hey, Brian, what would you do here? I would take a handful of rows out of the top in each of the corners of the upper deck and make some kind of congregation standing room areas. The old Odd had standing room up at the top of the oranges, up in the top of the building. And I remember those being really cool. I don't know if that's possible to do structurally in KeyBank Center, but because concourses are closed in most hockey buildings like that, I mean, it's tough to be able to, like, quote, hang out and see the game at the same time. You have that in the suite level, but let's face that, the suite level might not be an option for a lot of fans affordability-wise. So can you create some sort of outside congregation areas that might be fun? The scoreboard, definitely. The seats I mentioned, definitely. Beyond that, though, a lot of the problems are amplified when fans are annoyed at the hockey team's performance. Let's face it. Yep. If this team was the best in the NHL,
nobody would say nothing.
If they were like the Lightning coming off of back-to-back Stanley Cups, I doubt people are saying, well, yeah, I love the Sabres, but my seat cushion has a tear in it. Yeah, they might be annoyed here and there, but they're excited because their team won the Cup. So winning will allow a lot of people to forget the fact that maybe their seat cushion isn't as spongy as it was 10 years ago.
Well, look at the Red Wings with the Joe Louis Arena. Before they moved to Little Caesars Arena, the arena was aging, declining, and it wasn't state of the art by any means. It was built in the late 70s really cheaply.
But they were winning.
But the Red Wings were winning for 25 years. Nobody complained about it. And then when they demolished it, everybody's missing the arena because they had so much success there. But once the Red Wings, hopefully in the next year or two, under Steve Yzerman and Jeff Blashill, start winning again, then people will start saying, oh, Little Caesars Arena is great, because I've been hearing, oh, it's not the same as the Joe. But once the team starts winning, you're right, winning sells a lot.
For sure. And I think even with the Bills right now, no one's concerned about going to Highmark Stadium thinking they're not going to have a good time because of the stadium. People are so focused on how great this team is. And I think you're right. I think that'll solve a lot with the Sabres if they can get back on the winning side on the ice.
Okay. Just two quick questions I wanted to ask you. Is there a Sabres player next year that could surprise some of us as fans in the media?
Ooh, good question. Surprise. Wow, you stumped me. I'm trying to think. You know what? I'll go back to the goalie conversation we had before. I think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's ready to go. I really do. I saw enough out of him. I'm excited to see him take over as the number one goalie. I think he's going to be the number one goalie, and I think he's going to play well. And I think he's going to give the Sabres some very good chances to win. I think the fact that the Sabres only went out and got Craig Anderson and Aaron Dell is telling me that they have some of that belief too. So I'll say that they're going to get much better play in goal than maybe people are expecting.
Okay. And then these are just Bills-related questions for you, Brian. Maybe next time I have you on, maybe we'll talk more golf, because I don't know a lot about golf, and I kind of would like to learn more, because I'm learning more about lacrosse right now, and also curling. So, yeah, maybe in the future I'll have you back for golf talk, because there's a lot about the game that I don't know about. But just got a couple of Bills questions quickly for you, and that's it. What were your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills giving Josh Allen a 6-year deal at $258 and $150 million guaranteed?
Those are just astronomical numbers as you read them. But that's what the cost is right now to have an elite quarterback in the NFL. Fans for 25 years have been clamoring for the Bills to have an elite Pro Bowl, almost MVP quarterback. I mean, he finished second in the MVP voting behind Aaron Rodgers. So the problem is when they get this good, you have to pay them, but you'd much rather have to pay them than have to go out and search to go find that quarterback. So I think Josh Allen is the real deal. I don't have any worries about the money given to him. I know there's other quarterbacks that have been given tons of money, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, others like that people are like, uh-oh, that didn't work out. I have zero sense that Allen's going to fall into that boat. His work ethic's too strong. His improvement level has just gone in such a right direction. Like, we haven't seen him come down. So it shows to me that the growth is legit, that it's not fake. And the work ethic that he puts in the offseason, I think he's the right fit for this community. He's the right amount of guy that wants to have fun, that loves his teammates, that doesn't have too big of an ego, but at the same time, he's confident in his physical abilities that he can go out and make plays. So this is just what it costs now. The numbers are mind-boggling for you and I to think, like, what does $258 million look like? Like that, it's just something my brain can't comprehend. But good for him. I'm not upset that he got it. I'm happy that the Bills have found themselves a quarterback that maybe can be an NFL MVP here in the very near future.
And I was going to say, and this leads to my last question I wanted to ask you. Are the Buffalo Bills, in your opinion, a Super Bowl contender in 2021? And will a new stadium happen in Orchard Park, let's say, within the next 5 years? And what would the cost be approximately they're talking about?
So your first question, are they a contender? My answer is definitely yes. I think we saw that last year. I mean, they were ahead on the Chiefs in the second quarter in the AFC Championship game. So the fact that they got down to the Final Four of the NFL, I think that's the case. I mean, let's face it, this whole offseason, the discussion has been about, can they compete with the Chiefs, which means they have Super Bowl aspirations. Kansas City's represented the AFC in the Super Bowl the last 2 years. Other than Kansas City, I'm confident putting the Bills roster up against anybody in the NFL. Now, the NFL is a one and done in the playoffs. So they also, this year, if you saw them lose in the second round of the playoffs or the first round of the playoffs, like, it could happen. I mean, it would feel crushing to fans, but it could happen. I mean, there's other good teams in the AFC. Tennessee's very good. Baltimore's very good. Cleveland seems to be trending in the right direction. So it can happen. It's not a 7-game series like in hockey or in baseball or in basketball. So, yes, I think it would be disappointing at the very least if the Bills didn't get back to the AFC Championship. Getting that number 1 seed is huge and home field advantage. Can they get that over Kansas City? I think the Bills have an easier schedule this year. So that could be really a goal for them. Hey, let's try and get the 1 seed this year. Let's try to have that AFC Championship game in our stadium to give themselves a better chance to win. So, yes, absolutely, they're a Super Bowl contender. Will a new stadium happen in Orchard Park? Yes. I know that there'll be a lot of posturing and a lot of in the public bargaining. Fans are going to be upset about the fact that billions are being discussed. I saw 1.4 billion was maybe the number that they wanted to put in the stadium. I think it'll happen in Orchard Park. It sounds like they want to put it right across the street and get that going. I would guess that politicians realize how important the Bills are to this Western New York community and to Southern Ontario and to Rochester and all these other areas that surround that fans come in from. They're not going to let the Bills get away on their watch. So in the end, I think they'll come to an agreement. I would say within 5 years or so, I think you will see a new stadium out in Orchard Park.
I was going to say, and that would also help with getting free agents in the future too, having a state-of-the-art football stadium and facilities for the team as well.
Yeah, they've got a state-of-the-art weight room, one of the best in the NFL. Their indoor practice facility is outstanding, but obviously the stadium compared to other stadiums is got a gap. So I think they want to keep some of the things that they have great going out there, like their weight training facility, like their indoor facility. And by this way, having the stadium right across the street, they can still use some of those facilities and not just have to tear them down too.
That's true. Before I let you go, the only concern I would have is a running game, because I think Josh Allen did a little, I know he's great. He's a great athlete, but I think they need to get more contribution from Singletary. I think if their pass rush could be more effective than last year, the linebackers will be more effective, and obviously the Pro Bowl cornerbacks as well will be even better as well. Because I just think having a pass rush will make your defense so much better, and you wouldn't struggle as much as they did last year, not having that pass rusher that they took this year in the draft.
Yeah, Greg Russo's been excellent. in the preseason so far. He's been dominant. So I'm sure Bills fans are hoping that it'll translate over to the regular season. He's been very, very good. Russo has lived up to it. And it's 2 preseason games, but so far the hype's been there. He's been good. That'll definitely help him. Look at how the Buccaneers really disrupted the Chiefs' offense by putting a ton of pressures. Mahomes was pressured more in that Super Bowl than in any other Super Bowl in history. I mean, that's pretty incredible. It's a big reason why the Chiefs' offense couldn't get going. So I think that's a plan of attack for the Bills, to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes and the best elite quarterbacks in the league. Devin Singletary's had a great offseason, and I think he's having a great preseason. I think he and Zach Moss, and they added Matt Breida, who I think is an upgrade, even depth at running back. I think the question will just be, does Brian Dabel want to run the ball? He showed at times last year he doesn't even care about running. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but sometimes you would see the Bills throw it 10, 12 times in a row. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in the league, that's fine. It's like that's the trend right now. When they have to run it, I think they'll have a better go at it this year. I still don't see it being a massive part of their offense, just because that's not their strength. Their strength is Allen and the 3 stud receivers of Diggs and Sanders and Beasley. So I think you'll just see more of that this year, I think, through the passing game. But I think the running back production should be better. It wasn't great last year, so I think it has to be better too.
That would be my only concern, especially in the postseason, because the weather gets bad and the passing game is not effective if you're outdoors. And I just think you don't want to be one-dimensional especially in the playoffs with your offense. So those are my only 2 concerns: is the pass rush and their running games with Singletary and Moss. Otherwise, I think the Bills should have another really good regular season.
I agree. And Singletary has shown so far in the preseason that he's adding a different element. He's so good at shedding tacklers. I think that when they need to go to him, I think he's going to have a really, really good season.
Okay. Well, Brian, I'm going to let you go, but I just want to say thank you so much again for coming on live with CDP. And hopefully maybe we can have you come back on again in the future, maybe when the Sabres season starts and the Bills season's going underway as well.
Sounds great, Chris. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thank you. And where can people find you on social media again?
Sure. At Twitter, at BrianWGR. If you are interested in any of my Tee to Green stuff for golf, T2Green.golf is the website, or my Twitter handle on Twitter as well for our Tee to Green coverage is at T2G Buffalo. So any of that is welcome, and let's hope we've got something fun to talk about with the Sabres this year.
Okay, definitely. All right, Brian, have a great day and great week, and we'll keep in touch with you on social media. Again, thank you for coming on today.
No problem. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody.
You too. Take care, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my guest today, Brian Koziol from WGR 550. He's a pre- and post-game host for the Buffalo Sabres Radio Network, and he's also a host for Tee to Green Golf, if you want to check out their website as well. Anyways, I just want to thank everybody for watching my Live with CDP podcast this morning, live on YouTube, Twitch live streaming, and Twitter as well. My next podcast, guys, actually, before we get into my next podcast, since I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, Miguel Cabrera hit number 500 yesterday. So I just want to put that up on here and just show some highlights of Miggy's 500th home run I hit in the Rogers Center yesterday in Toronto. And then we'll get to my next podcast. One sec, guys.
Takes one inside 1-0. Everybody wants a piece. Couldn't hold up. It's 1-1. The 1-1. Deep fly ball. Right center field. That's got carry. It's gone! Number 500 and history for Miguel Cabrera. what an awesome sight. Take that curtain call. You deserve it.
Anyways, guys, so Miguel Cabrera is the 28th player in Major League Baseball history to hit 500 home runs. He's also the first Detroit Tiger ever hit 500 home runs in a Detroit Tigers uniform. Obviously, some of his early home runs came with the Florida Marlins, but a majority have been with the Detroit Tigers. So Miguel Cabrera is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and his number 24 will be retired one day at Comerica Park, along with Justin Verlander's number 35 and Sweet Lou Whitaker's number 1, which is going to be next year. Miguel Cabrera's career stats: 311 batting average, 500 home runs, 1,785 RBIs, and Miguel Cabrera has also got 2,955 hits. So his next two goals is 45 more hits to 3,000, which hasn't been done since Al Kaline did it in 1974 for the Tigers at Baltimore. And also, he's only 15 RBIs away from the 1,800 RBIs. So congratulations to Miguel Cabrera, and thumbs up to the Toronto Blue Jays organization and the fans for stopping the game so Miggy could celebrate his 500th home run and give him a standing ovation. So thumbs up to the Blue Jays and stuff like that. So the Tigers have an off day today. Their next two games are at St. Louis, Tuesday and Wednesday at St. Louis, off day Thursday, and then next weekend the Toronto Blue Jays pay a visit to Comerica Park, and I believe Miguel Cabrera Appreciation Day will be September 24th. So I'm so happy Miggy finally got that out of the way, and like I said, he's one of the greatest players of all time, greatest hitters of all time as well. Anyways, guys, before I go, I just want to let you know my next Live with CDP podcast will be tomorrow, Tuesday, August 24th at 12 p.m. approximately. If the time changes, I'll let you know. Guest will be Tom McCarthy, the TV play-by-play announcer for the Philadelphia Phillies on NBC Sportsnet Philadelphia, and also an NFL announcer on the NFL on CBS. So hopefully Tom will be on tomorrow. We can talk some Phillies baseball with him and also talk some NFL with him as well. He's had a long career in radio and television with the Phillies and the Mets, and he's been with the NFL on CBS, I believe, since 2014. So if anything changes with the time tomorrow, I will let you guys know. And also, guys, if you're interested in one of my Live with CDP podcast hats, please send me a message. Live with CDP merchandise podcast shirts are $15, coffee mugs are $15, and my new podcast hats, which I'm wearing today, are $18. So shipping is extra if you're out of Guelph and if you're out of the country as well. So anyways, guys, like I said, thank you everybody for watching. And just before I go, I just always do this as well. Live with CDP podcast, which I'll download later. The audio version will be on Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, and Castbox. And also, if you're following me on LinkedIn, my audio version of Live with CDP podcast is on my LinkedIn page as well. And as for Facebook, this is day 35 without Facebook. I doubt I'm going to be back on Facebook, but I have some other news coming up soon too. I do have, let's see, I just wanted to put this on here for you guys. I do have a website coming. I bought the domain. Live with CDP website is coming soon. As soon as we get this website up and running, I will let you guys all know and stuff like that. So, anyways, guys, like I said, thank you to Brian Koziol from WGR 550 coming on today, talking Sabres hockey and some Bills football. And thank you everybody for watching this live on YouTube again, Twitch live streaming, and Twitter at Christy Pame as well. And just also just to let you guys know too, you guys, if you'd like to, you can follow me, friend me on TikTok at Live with CDP on there as my handle, as I post on there quite often as well. So, all right, guys, I'm going to call it a show, but just wanted to say thank you again for watching or listening to Live with CDP podcast, live on audio or live on live streaming or on audio. And like I said again, tomorrow, Tuesday, August 24th, around 12 o'clock noon, Tom McCarthy from the Philadelphia Phillies and a lead announcer on the NFL on CBS will be my next guest. Okay, guys, I hope you all have a great Monday, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow at noontime with Tom McCarthy. Thanks again for watching Live with CDP.